Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today I would like to continue on with our discussion through the works or the releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2020. And today we come to a title that has already been released by the Criterion Collection under an earlier DVD at spine number 177. This is a film that is from 1975 from filmmakers Volker, Schlöndorff and Margarethe von Trotta. And it is an amazing, incredibly unforgettable work that is very powerful, and it retains its power even to this day. It is the incredible work which is called The Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM. Released in 1975 from filmmakers Volker Schlöndorff and Margarethe von Trotta, starring Angela Winkler and based off of the novel by Heinrich Böll. This is the brilliant masterpiece, The Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM, and it is dealing with many aspects that are deep-rooted in the context of West Germany in the 1970s, and it is dealing, of course, with issues specific there in terms of individual freedoms on the one hand, and also the what might be termed certain staples or principles or perhaps rigidities of a democratic society, and the push and pull between freedoms and order, the idea that is further augmented or further tested in the context of West Germany at this time, where you had many things going on at once in terms of what might be termed terrorism or radicalism, and also government impositions, and also the press and the quote-unquote freedom of the press, and how far those freedoms can be forced until other individual freedoms are intruded upon in a very detrimental way. And this is all rooted, of course, in Heinrich Böll's writing and philosophy, and in particular the issue that was faced with him particularly and Axel Springer and the newspapers. And so this all is encompassed in a film that, as I try to explain it, might seem on the one hand to be deeply rooted in a specificity of time and place, namely West Germany in the 1970s. And if you think that way, I think you would be right, of course, because it is a film that is heavily dependent on its social and historical context. And it's brilliant for it, absolutely brilliant in terms of capturing this kind of sense of almost on-the-edge paranoia and the idea of trust and mistrust. But these themes can be carried through also on a universal level, such that one can watch this film and not necessarily be wholly integrated into the social context, if you will, of the storytelling that is at the heart of this film on the one hand. But still, I think there is a possibility of connecting with this film, because this film deals with universal themes of sort of principles of democracy that are pushed to their limit, especially when dealing with a story about an individual, and how there's this idea of surveillance and also authoritarianism, and also government authoritarian pressure, and how that affects the psyche and psychologies of the individual person and the spirit, and how this translates into a discussion of civil liberties and the emotional impact of the push and pull of this kind of real life dilemma and situations played out again in the context of the story of Katharina BLUM, and you throw in there aspects of the press and how certain aspects of journalism, and we can use air quotes around that word journalism, especially when we talk about it in the context of this film, how this really pushes these notions of freedoms to their very limit, to the point where we reach a level of irony and hypocrisy, and we really come to question a lot of things that we might otherwise be heavily reliant upon in terms of bedrock democratic principles and the like. Not to mention, of course, the fact that this is a very arresting, very taut, intense drama. It is very intense and is very artistically impressed upon, and it is placed in tones and colors and highlights that are infused with not just a deep-rooted sense of social awareness, but also a beautifully placed sense of artistry and style that is a reflection of the coolness, if you will, of the societal structures that are at place here, and also the kind of almost anarchic or chaotic paranoia that is also at place here, that really creates a deep-seated environment or atmosphere that permeates the entirety of the proceedings. This is a brilliant work, my friends, incredibly impactful, and it is it leads to certain places that are not comfortable. There are a lot of disturbing avenues that are at the subject of all the possible discussions here, and I think it is a wholly worthwhile effort, incredibly arresting, truly brilliant, perhaps a film that is at once part of its time but also ahead of its time. It is at once a film that is about West Germany during the 1970s, but also it is a film that is about any age and any time, wherever there are certain aspects of society that deal perhaps on the surface with democratic principles, but underneath there are tensions between those principles and the way in which authoritarianism might be used to implement certain of its ideals, and whether that what kinds of emotional tolls are brought about because of this. Therefore, this is a brilliantly conceived work on all levels, and the Criterion Collection has done a wonderful job with this and the earlier DVD as well, which is right here, but I'll talk about that in one moment. But in the meantime, my friends, if you haven't seen this film, I strongly urge you to check it out, because it is very impactful and it poses a lot of questions that are that have a lot of meaning and whose answers might not necessarily be the most comfortable. And I think that is a sign of a truly great work of art. This is The Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM. And what we have here is, of course, the new Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection that was released earlier this year in 2020. And it is, of course, similar to, or almost exactly the same as the earlier DVD release, again from the Criterion Collection. This earlier DVD release is copyright 2003, and so there are a lot of parallels that are made between the topics of West Germany in the 1970s, that is at the direct heart of this film on the one hand, and the period of U.S. history and world history that was still very much very potent and very relevant in the air in the early 2000s, immediately following the events of 9/11. And so this DVD and the supplements that are included here make reference to this kind of atmosphere and politics, and I think that is a really potent and apt parallel to make, and I'm so glad that the Criterion Collection has retained those same supplements for purposes of this new Blu-ray, because it really gives us a real sense of history and how, as well as I was trying to suggest earlier, this film is also a very universal one that can adapt to many historical situations that occur elsewhere outside of Germany or West Germany at the time. So this is an incredibly potentially relevant work even in the modern era. But getting back to this, of course, we have the new Blu-ray, which is purported to be based off of a new 4K digital restoration. We had the earlier DVD, which I thought was really fantastic, and the Blu-ray is also just splendid, absolutely splendid. But we do have this new Blu-ray from Criterion. And speaking of the release itself, let's talk about the supplements. So first of all, we have an interview with the filmmakers Volker Schlöndorff and Margarethe von Trotta, and this is a discussion with the two of them in a kind of joint interview, although they're seen either together or maybe individually. And it starts primarily with Volker Schlöndorff talking about the project and the filmmaking and Margarethe von Trotta's involvement and what their partnership was like. And also they're talking about the actors and the performers. And they actually make a lot of bold comments about many aspects of the filmmaking and performances, and so in that sense it's a very refreshing type of supplement. And of course they talk about the importance of the story structure, Heinrich Böll and his significance, of course, and this rounds out into what amounts to be an utterly splendid joint interview, Volker Schlöndorff and Margarethe von Trotta, and this is carried over from the earlier DVD, and so you'll find references made to certain events that occurred post 2001, and so that's what I was suggesting earlier, in that there is a real sense of this film potentially or being potentially relevant to many other aspects of human and world history, and it's really wonderful to hear the comments by the filmmakers. So this is the joint interview, which is approximately 29 minutes. And then there is what's described as being an excerpt from a documentary from 1977, which is on Heinrich Böll. And so this is the author whose work was the basis for this film, The Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM. And Böll is, of course, a Nobel Prize-winning author. Women in a River Landscape or Irish Journal, bred of those early years, and other works, and of course the work that eventually became Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM. This documentary or excerpt documentary is, I think, incredibly important because it in principle presents two basic functions that I think are essential for a viewing of Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM. One is, of course, the personage and the actual interviews with the author, Heinrich Böll himself. And so this is incredibly important because to get an understanding and sense of Heinrich Böll's struggles and writings, and how important his writings were, and in terms of his relationship with the press and Springer, and how this is, of course, very keyed into the whole narrative structure of The Lost Honor of Katharina BLUM, because, as you know, the issue of the press is very critical in an understanding of this film. And so we get a sense of who Heinrich Böll was, which is, again, I think very, very important for a reading of this film. But that's not all, because we also get integrated into a discussion of the author. We also get discussions of specific events in the late 60s and early 70s in West Germany that really played a role in forming and informing the societal concerns and political concerns that faced West Germany at or around the time that this story takes place. And so we get a real, I think, vivid sense, a history coming alive as to sort of the political concerns, the violence, and the kind of sort of upheaval that really played an impact on civil liberties and human individual freedoms, and the government and political activity, which again form the backdrop, the essential backdrop for this film, The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. And so therefore this documentary, or excerpted documentary from 1977, is another essential supplement with respect to this film. So it's wonderful to have that. Again, we have it taken from the earlier DVD, so again, really wonderful to have. And then we have another supplement. This is again from 2002-2003, and this is with the director of photography, Jost Vacano. And Jost Vacano talks about, in a one-on-one interview, which is approximately 16 minutes, he talks, of course, about the look, and he talks about the stylistic decisions that went into, for example, specific cameras that were used in certain shots. He talks about why certain film stock was used here versus there, and how that thematically is linked into the notion of government surveillance or other types of surveillance, and how that is in essence an implicit conversation about the nature of the intrusion on individual liberties. And so therefore the look is intrinsically linked with the thematic concerns of the film, and other very great discussions of that sort. So we have this wonderful interview with Jost Vacano. Again, this is from 2002-2003, and it's in fact from the earlier DVD. So we're getting it carried over into this Blu-ray, but it's still really wonderful to have. And so that is the interview with the director of photography. And then the supplements are rounded out with a trailer, and then we have the insert itself. And the insert is again one of the foldouts, and I don't have to go into my views on the foldouts because in past videos I've made my views known, but still we have a great essay, a really great essay, which is called The Past is Present by Amy Taubin. And this is very interesting because we have the earlier DVD insert, which is right here, and it's a little bit shorter, but we have the essay which is called Honoring Katharina by Amy Taubin. So in fact we have the same author authoring or penning the separate essays that appear in each of the different releases for The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. I must say that the new essay is incredibly brilliant, especially how it is able to tie in the circumstances and the themes of The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum into an up-to-date modern context, which is, I think, a very fascinating discussion. And whether one agrees or not with the author's conclusions about certain connections, I think is up to you to discern. And I would say also, for me personally, while I wouldn't necessarily say that I agree 100% with all of the conclusions that are made by the author in this current essay, still I think the fact that the essay is being made, and also the fact that the sorts of discussions are being made like this, I think is very admirable, and it's giving me a lot of food for thought. And so I find it to be really quite a brilliant and a thought-provoking piece. And it's a nice follow-up or complement to, as I say, her earlier essay, which was called Honoring Katharina, which is right here, which is also a really brilliant rendering or reading of the work that I thought was very essential when it came to the earlier DVD, and I still think that it's essential now, as well as her new essay. So wonderful job, Amy Taubin's essay, The Past is Present. So, my friends, this is the release of The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. And I must say also that we have new artwork, which is very interesting. This is the earlier DVD artwork, which I thought was very apropos because it focuses in on the main character as well. But here we have the new artwork, which I must say has that really brilliantly rendered notion of the effect on the individual and this warped image and what appear to be newspaper clippings and the like, but it's not really fully integrated together, but it's roughly sewn in, and there are ripped edges and everything is jagged, which I think is very symbolic. And I think those of you who know the film probably know what I'm referring to. So I love this really apropos symbolism that is taking place with this design. I think it's a brilliant design, and there's the back there just for your information. So this is as I say, brilliantly rendered film, The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum, that is at once a kind of a look into a historical past that wasn't so far away, and it wasn't so far away to the extent that I think we still feel a lot of its themes and a lot of its concerns in many other parts of history, and perhaps we might feel some of those even now, which makes this film, I think, wholly pertinent and very relevant, and certainly worthy of a kind of a modern day discussion, which I hope is engaged in when people see this film. And great job with this Criterion release. Again, heavily reliant on the earlier DVD release, which I thought was really fantastic. So it's nice to get a little upgrade here. It would have been nice, I think, to have seen maybe some new supplements. It would have been nice maybe to have some more one-on-one interviews with academic scholars and the like. Again, I should note that there was never any commentary track, which is unfortunate because it could have been a great opportunity to have another new commentary track for this film by the Criterion. But once again, we have a release that doesn't have a commentary track, and so it would have been really fantastic if this had a commentary track, but oh well, c'est la vie, as the saying goes. But as far as that's concerned, we still have what I consider to be the crucial interviews, which I described earlier, and also the look into the life and work of Heinrich Böll, which is of course very key to an understanding and reading of this work. And then we have the film itself in this presentation. Essential, haunting, very disturbing in some places, very effective in its portrayal of a sort of an emotional as well as a societally affected sense of paranoia. This is the unforgettable work, The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you once again for your time, my dear friends, and cheers.